from? It's something I often get asked, and I understand why. I don't look distinctively Asian, but there's no one European country where you could place me either. The question is not as simple as it seems. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, but my father is Russian, Polish, and German, while my mother is Taiwanese. While some aspects of growing up were the same, my siblings and I also experienced unique and sometimes baffling cultural combinations. Growing up, we ate white rice every day, but frequently topped it with Parmesan cheese. In our earliest days, we awoke to Chinese nursery rhymes and greetings, thanks to the Beijing nanny my parents hired to watch over us while they were gone for work. But we fell asleep to Grimm's fairy tales told by my father, or immigration stories from my mother at bedtime.
But I also want to say that our nanny was from China, and I hired a Chinese nanny because I thought that would help my children learn Mandarin and also learn more about Chinese culture.
Our relatives were another source of cultural variation. While my paternal grandparents brought us nesting Russian Matryoshka dolls, my maternal grandparents sent us lucky red envelopes at New Year's. As a kid, though I was interested in Asian culture, my unusual looks and American upbringing made it difficult to fit in. Embarrassingly enough, the first and only time I visited Taiwan, my uncle had to drive almost an hour to bring me McDonald's hamburgers, one of the only familiar foods available in Taiwan I was willing to eat. Connecting with my father's family came much more easily. Only a 5-minute bike ride separated our house from my paternal grandfather's, where my sisters and I were guaranteed to find a bowl full of sugar cubes and soft sheepskin throws. However, in defining the process of growing up half Asian, I can only speak for my own experiences growing up in Palo Alto, California, a relatively well-educated, liberal, and diverse community where interracial marriages are common. To find out how the experiences of half Asians in other parts of the country might differ from mine, I asked Sam Galler, a half Korean friend raised in Boulder, Colorado, to share some of his memories.
I'm Sam Galler. I'm a senior here at Harvard, studying East Asian Studies. I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, and I grew up in a city, in a community that didn't have very many Asian people. I'm half Asian. My mom is Korean, and my dad is American. My mom actually grew up in Canada, so I'm third generation, and she doesn't speak Korean, so our house didn't have very much Asian culture, or at least we weren't speaking Korean. We weren't eating very much Korean food. And when we went to visit my grandmother, we all spoke English, and she didn't always cook Korean food. The only real thing that we had was we always had kimchi, which we never really liked as children anyways. But when I was in school, I remember other people identifying us as Asian, and we sort of took that on as a fact, but we didn't really have many ideas about what that meant in terms of what culture we were tied to. We didn't know very much about Korean culture, and there weren't very many Asians where we were growing up, so it didn't seem like we were being associated or accorded into a certain community or anything like that. We just thought it was sort of a cool little identity card, and because we were half Asian, we also did not feel tied to that identity. We also felt like we were not Asian as well.
To get another perspective, I interviewed Philip Desai Silva from Bellevue, Washington.
Hi, I'm Philip Desai Silva. I'm a junior at Harvard, and I grew up in Bellevue, Washington, which is a suburb of Seattle. And there, my high school was, I think, about like 60-70% white, and then the rest was Asian American. So I grew up in a community with like a lot of Asian people, and there were a lot of half Asian students at my high school, so I never really felt that out of place until I think I moved to the East Coast, and then I became more aware of my race. And sometimes I see myself as more Asian, and sometimes I see myself as more white. I think it just depends on who I'm with. When I'm with my Asian relatives, I feel more white because I can't speak Korean, and so I feel like there's a bit of like a cultural gap. But when I'm with, I think when I'm with like white people, I feel a bit more Asian, but it's weird because I think they see me more as white. I've been in lots of situations where people will say something like sort of like racist about like Asian people, and I'll get really offended and I'll like say something about it, and they'll be like, oh, but you don't really count, you're only half. But I'm like, no, I'm not half. And then in those moments I think I see myself as a lot more Asian.
I was also curious about the experiences of half-Asians in other countries and time periods. In some contexts, there seemed to be far more preconceptions and even legal ramifications for those of mixed ancestry. In characterizing the experience of half-Asians in the British colonies, Professor Emma Tang writes, during the era of imperialism, communities of Eurasians, mixed-race children of European and Asian ancestry developed in various places such as India, Hong Kong, China, Singapore, and elsewhere. Where is home for the Eurasian? Home was never simply a matter of individual choice or proclivity, but also determined by colonial definitions of race and identity. To find out more about what it is like to grow up as a half-Asian outside of the United States, I talked with my roommate from the Philippines, Rachel Lim. Okay, can you tell me a little bit about yourself and where you grew up?
Okay, so I grew up in the Philippines, so the Philippines was conquered by Spain for 300 years, and then we were sold to America. So it's like, there's this huge, like, colonial mentality thing. So we're like, if you're white or you speak English, like, better than the majority of people, then it's considered better, or like considered the ideal. So like, because I was half, like, because my grandma was from Spain, so I look like more foreign than most Filipinos. So because of that, I feel like I was treated pretty differently. I don't know. So like, in school I wasn't expected to know Filipino, or like I would still get A's in my Filipino classes even if I couldn't really speak Filipino, because I wasn't expected to know it and it was okay if I didn't know it. And like, people would talk to me, or they would try to talk to me at first in English because it was like assumed that I didn't know any Filipino, or like I didn't know my own culture. And when I was there, I was actually like, I was okay with that, because it was sort of accepted or even encouraged that like, if you didn't look like you fit the norm, then you shouldn't behave like you do. So, but now that I'm here, it's like I feel really ashamed that I can't really speak about my culture, because I was never really expected, like, because of the way I look, and like I wasn't expected to know it or like belong to it. So I feel like such an outsider now that I'm outside of it.
Yeah. So can you tell me a little bit more about your family background? So you said your grandmother is
from
Spanish.
Spain. Yep, and then so like, I'm not sure when she came to the Philippines, so like she died before my mom really knew her, and my grandpa on my mom's side was also part Spanish, and then on my dad's side he was part Chinese, so like I'm like a mishmash. Yeah, and I mean that's generally true of the Philippines actually as a whole, but I guess racial lottery, depending on what you look like, your skin tone and stuff, is more obvious.
Do you think that being half Asian or being of mixed ancestry is different in the Philippines than it would be in the U.S.?
I feel like it would be, definitely, because of all the history of colonialism in the Philippines. Like, it really makes an impact, like what you look like and how you speak. I don't know. Like, I feel like it makes a huge difference.
Yes. Whereas here, I guess everyone is an immigrant and everyone's
yeah.
mixed up.
Because this is an immigrant country, like, it matters less, I feel like.
I also wanted to know how perceptions of being half Asian changed with time. Kim Sui, a postdoc from my lab who grew up in Switzerland, shared with me what he remembered from his childhood.
So I grew up in Switzerland, so like most of my childhood, actually the entire childhood. And my mother is Swiss and my father is actually Chinese, but he grew up in Malaysia. So my grandparents on the father's sides came from China. And yeah, so now I guess, so growing up in Switzerland with a mixed background, I guess was at the beginning not so easy, and I assume it's not so easy for everybody, because of course there is not a lot of at that time at least there was not of people. I grew up in a small town and there was not a lot of Asian people. And I wouldn't say it was tough, but So of course there was a lot of jokes in when you're a kid or during the schools, and the jokes were not racist at all, but I mean, obviously you're different, and also as a child, I guess everybody tries to be as normal as possible, so I was trying to be as Swiss as possible and not trying I was trying to kick out the Asian culture at the beginning, which of course now I regret a lot, because for example my father tried to teach me Chinese, but I guess I didn't want to learn Chinese at all, because this would make me different, and even speaking Chinese at that time I would feel like not comfortable, because yeah, it's just different. So I guess I was not willing to learn Chinese, and now I really regret it a lot, obviously, because of the importance that China has in the economy. So.
Finally, I asked my sister Sonia and her friend Mia what they thought about being half Asian.
Me and Sonia first became friends in 7th grade, and we knew that we were both half Asian, which I guess gave us a sort.
It kind of made us gravitate towards
exactly.
each other, just because we saw some similarities there.
But then beyond that, it didn't really.
There was no significance in it, because there were so many other things besides being half Asian to be friends about.
No, our only friends were being half Asian.
Yeah.
That's my goal in life.
In the end, cultural heritage is just one thing that makes us who we are.